When it comes to health and fitness, everyone will tell you that you can't out-train a bad diet. But that's absolute garbage, and I'm going to show you exactly how you can out-train a Big Mac. This is the kind of video where most people would eat a Big Mac and then do a bunch of crazy things just to show you how long it takes to burn off a Big Mac. The benefit here is that I do a bunch of crazy stuff all the time, so I'm simply able to show you my Garmin stats rather than make myself feel crap by eating Big Mac and then having to go for a run afterwards. The truth about using training to outrun your bad diet is that you need to be prepared for a battle. Some of these foods are so calorie dense, you won't believe the length of activities you have to go to simply burn them off. Now in Australia, a Big Mac is listed at 580 calories, and then a small fries and a small Sprite add up to a total of exactly 1,000 calories. Now, having done multiple sessions over the last few weeks that were over 1,000 calories each, I can share with you exactly what I had to do to burn off that Big Mac meal. For example, a 40-kilometer, 1 hour 30 flat aerobic ride where my max heart rate was only 158 beats a minute burnt 869 calories. So that's not a bad start. In contrast, I did a really hard VO2 max workout that was 18.2 kilometers, 45 minutes, max heart rate of 173 that burnt just under 400 calories. I did another hard workout of threshold repeats. It was nearly 23 kilometers, just over an hour, max heart rate 163 and burnt 716 calories. In contrast to those, a typical strength workout like this one here, 45-minute strength workout, 335 calories. But the big daddy, the one that really burns off this kind of meal, was an 8.6 kilometer, 4-hour hike carrying 17 kilo up and down a hill non-stop for that length of time, burnt 1,344 calories. Now, as you can see, while you can use exercise to burn off these things, no one is going out and repeating a VO2 max workout 5 days a week or a 4-hour hike to actually make up the amount of energy required to burn off those things. But it is possible. And when we look at the calorie burn, what's the big lesson? The big lesson is that if you want to burn off tons of energy, you're better going moderate and longer rather than shorter and harder. My VO2 max workout, as an example, it was a very short workout. I was shaking for hours afterwards because of how difficult it was. I certainly couldn't have made it much longer, and I certainly didn't want to repeat it the next day. But I could go for a 1.5 hour aerobic ride every day if I wanted to. The second point is that the higher the heart rate, the less carbohydrate you burn. As you go harder and harder, you burn less and less fat and more carbohydrate. That means that if you've just eaten the Big Mac, the high heart rate stuff is okay. However, if it's 2 days after the Big Mac and now you want to burn that off, that energy from the Big Mac has now been stored as body fat. And that means you need to choose a lower intensity session anyway, because the high heart rate stuff isn't going to burn off much, if any, of the stored body fat from it. And when it comes to our options, again, we want longer and more moderate. And that means that while resistance training is an important part of a healthy lifestyle and an overall training plan, it's not ideal from an energy consumption point of view because you're sitting still for more than half the time. Secondly, because of the style of training and the short bursts of work, it's very anaerobic, which again means you're burning more carbohydrate. If this is something where you've just eaten the Big Mac, that could be helpful, but once we've eaten that Big Mac, digested it, absorbed it, and stored it as fat, we again need to go and choose something that's going to be more about fat burning than it is about carbohydrate burning. And just like with most things, when we start looking at aerobic exercise, a higher VO2 max is better than a lower one. The reason being that a higher VO2 max allows you to consume more food without gaining weight. It also allows you to burn more fat sitting still and allows you to burn more fat as you work harder and harder. So for instance, if I had a higher VO2 max, while the percentage of carb to fat that I might have burnt from my VO2 max workout was very highly skewed towards carbs, if I were fitter, perhaps I might have changed that by as much as 10% in terms of how much body fat I was using. And don't forget, like this study here showed, that most smart trackers, so that's Garmin watches, Vivos, Fitbits, all of that kind of stuff, have as much as a 30% inaccuracy when it counts energy expenditure. In other words, they're good for measuring steps, they're good for measuring your heart rate when you're sat still like this, but when it comes to actually moving and doing something active, they can be out by a whopping amount. So there you go. It turns out, mathematically, you can out-train a Big Mac meal every day or a generally poor diet. If we use the Big Mac as an example, overconsumption of 1,000 calories per day, I would need to do 4 hours of hiking every single day to burn that Big Mac meal off every day. That means I'd need 28 hours of hiking every week to burn off those Big Mac meals that I'm chowing down on every single day. Now, if you've got the time for that, then you absolutely can out-train your poor diet. And that means that the best approach is, as always, try to avoid the poor food choices, but when you have them and you want to cover up your mistakes, so to speak, longer, more moderate, and more consistent always is going to be shorter and harder when it comes to total energy expenditure.